There's a specific kind of procrastination that's hard to explain unless you've felt it yourself. You're not avoiding the task because you hate it. You're not confused about what needs to be done. You might even care about it a lot. And yet, you're just stuck, sitting there, knowing you should start, wanting to start, but not moving. From the outside, it looks like laziness, or indifference, or bad habits. But inside, it feels very different. It feels like there's no ignition. Like the engine is there, the destination is clear, but the key just won't turn. This is something a lot of people with ADHD recognize instantly. Not the distraction part, not the hyperactivity stereotypes, but this strange resistance to beginning, especially with tasks that seem simple. 5 steps that feel like 50, a small email that feels heavier than it should. And the frustrating part is this: the more you tell yourself to just do it, the worse it gets. Because this isn't really about discipline. It's about how motivation actually works in an ADHD brain. Anyone can procrastinate sometimes. That part is normal. You put things off because you're tired, bored, or overwhelmed. But with ADHD, procrastination tends to show up in a very specific way. It's not occasional. It's patterned. And it shows up even when the task isn't that big. This is where a lot of misunderstandings start. From the outside, it looks like a choice. You're sitting there. The task is right in front of you. Nothing is physically stopping you. So people assume you're deciding not to do it, that you're being careless, or irresponsible, or just not trying hard enough. But inside, it doesn't feel like a decision at all. It feels more like friction. Like every step towards starting has resistance built into it. The task might only have a few steps, but your brain experiences it as something much heavier. Not intellectually, physically, emotionally. And when this keeps happening, it doesn't just affect productivity. It starts to affect how you see yourself. You start asking the same question over and over. Why is this so hard for me when it seems easy for everyone else? This is usually the point where people blame their character. But what's actually happening has very little to do with willpower. Here's the part most people get wrong. They assume procrastination is about not wanting something badly enough, about weak discipline, about needing to try harder. But for people with ADHD, the problem usually isn't desire, or understanding, or even effort. A lot of people with ADHD know exactly what needs to be done. They can explain it clearly. They can plan it out in their head. Sometimes they even care deeply about the outcome. And yet, the moment where action is supposed to begin just doesn't arrive. That's because motivation isn't a personality trait. It's not something you summon by lecturing yourself. Motivation is a signal, and that signal is generated by the brain. In an ADHD brain, that signal tends to be unreliable, not absent, just inconsistent. It doesn't show up when you expect it to. It doesn't respond to importance the way people think it should. Telling yourself that something matters or that you really should do it doesn't automatically flip the switch. So when someone with ADHD can't start, it's not because they don't care. It's because the brain hasn't delivered the internal message that says, now is the time to move. To understand why that signal doesn't show up, you have to look at dopamine, not as a buzzword, just as the brain's way of saying, this was worth doing. Dopamine isn't about pleasure in the way people usually think. It's not the reward itself. It's the message that connects effort to reward. You do something, your brain registers that it mattered, and next time, it's more willing to help you start again. In an ADHD brain, that system doesn't work smoothly. The issue isn't that there's no dopamine at all. It's that the delivery system is inefficient. The signal doesn't travel as reliably from one part of the brain to another, so the connection between effort and satisfaction gets weaker. What that means in real life is this: you can put in effort and still feel nothing afterward. No internal sense of progress. No feeling of, okay, that was good, let's keep going. And when effort doesn't feel rewarding, the brain quietly stops offering motivation. Over time, this creates a pattern. Starting feels heavy, continuing feels draining, and finishing doesn't feel satisfying enough to justify the struggle. That's why telling someone with ADHD to just push through rarely works. Their brain isn't refusing. It's just not reinforcing the behavior the way it should. If you have ADHD, this probably sounds familiar. You struggle to start for days, sometimes weeks. And then suddenly, when the deadline is right there, everything turns on. You focus. You move fast. You get more done in one night than you did all week. From the outside, it looks like proof that you could have done it all along, that you just waited on purpose. But that's not what's happening. What the deadline does is create urgency. And urgency is one of the few things that reliably boosts dopamine in an ADHD brain. The pressure acts like a temporary jumpstart. It forces the signal to finally show up. The problem is that this kind of motivation comes at a cost. It's stressful, it's exhausting, and it's unreliable. Not everything can be done at the last minute, especially when other people are involved or when something unexpected comes up. So while urgency can make action possible, it's not a healthy system to rely on. It doesn't mean procrastination is a good strategy. It just reveals something important. ADHD motivation doesn't respond to importance or intention. It responds to stimulation. When you step back and look at it, ADHD motivation isn't random. It's selective. It just responds to a very different set of triggers than people expect. It doesn't wake up because something is important, or because it's good for your future, or because you promised yourself you'd do better this time. Those reasons make sense logically, but logic alone doesn't move this system. What tends to work instead are a few specific conditions. One of them is interest. When something genuinely pulls your attention, effort stops feeling forced. Your brain engages without you having to push it. Another is urgency. Not long-term pressure, but immediate stakes. The kind that makes now feel different from later. Challenge matters too. When a task feels like a game, a problem to solve, or something you can beat, the brain gets involved. And finally, novelty. New settings, new angles, new ways of approaching the same work. You don't need all of these at once. Most of the time, just adding one is enough to change how the task feels. That's the key difference. ADHD brains don't respond to importance. They respond to stimulation. Once you understand what the ADHD brain responds to, the goal changes. It's no longer about forcing yourself to be more disciplined. It's about shaping the task so your brain actually wants to engage with it. This is why simple tools can make such a big difference. A timer, for example, doesn't just track time. It creates urgency. It turns a vague, endless task into something contained. You're not committing to finishing everything. You're committing to showing up for a short window. Working alongside someone can help too. Not to be supervised, just to not be alone with the task. The presence of another person often makes starting feel safer and lighter. It reduces the mental load before you even begin. Changing your environment matters more than people think. A different room, a cafe, a library, something new enough to shift your mood. Novelty can do what motivation speeches can't. And breaking work into short segments isn't about being gentle with yourself. It's about respecting how focus actually works in an ADHD brain. Long stretches drain it. Short cycles support it. None of this is about fixing yourself. It's about working with the system you have. If you have ADHD and you struggle to start things, it's easy to assume something is wrong with you, that you're broken in some subtle way, that everyone else got a manual you somehow missed. But what you've been dealing with isn't a character flaw. It's a mismatch. Your brain isn't designed to respond to pressure, importance, or guilt the way people expect. It responds to stimulation, timing, and environment. Once you see that, procrastination stops being a personal failure and starts becoming information. A signal. It tells you the conditions aren't right yet, not that you're incapable. So the goal isn't to force motivation where it doesn't exist. It's to create the conditions where it can actually show up. And when you do that, starting becomes less painful. Not effortless, but possible. That's basically it.